forward. As usual, we will start the class by chanting prayer, by saluting our masters. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisance unto him. With that, we are ready to move forward after taking blessings of our Guru. Session overview. As usual, we will look at book overview to understand where we are standing on this journey. We started long back and we have already covered quite a ground. In the last session, we completed the fourth chapter, chapter of mindset of inspiration, right? And mindset of purity of intention. And today we are starting a new chapter that is on cultivating the knowledge. So after looking at the book overview, we will jump into book reading. Then we will watch a video which is also related to the topic, related to the content that we will be reading from the chapter. And then we will look at quiz, which is also a summary. Then we will get into some discussion depending on time. And we will close the session with the help of an assignment to practice the knowledge in our life. So where do we stand on our journey? As I said, we have completed first 5 chapters, including the introduction chapter. And currently we are on this fifth chapter, the mindset of cultivating knowledge. And this chapter has many elements to learn. As you can see on this slide, it has several things that we can learn today. I hope you all can hear me. So today we will just look at the chapter prologue, the introduction part, and from next session onwards, we will jump into all these topics. Okay, so as usual, I think we will start. We will not look at the recap. Last session, we did the recap, the summary of all the points that we learned in the last chapter. So that covers everything. So today we will jump into book reading right away. As usual, in this class, we provide opportunity to people to read the paragraphs and then we try to go through the details with the help of some analysis. So anybody who is interested, feel free to raise your hand. We will give you opportunity to speak. No problem. So yeah, I can see already Sheetal ji has raised her hand. We will get started with her. Let's unmute Sheetal ji. Let me just try to unmute you. You should be able to speak now.
Yes, Radhe Radhe Ganesh ji.
Radhe Radhe Sheetal ji. Go ahead.
The mindset of cultivating knowledge. In the previous chapter, we saw how purity of intention lifts our mind above negative emotions. But mere intention is not enough. As the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Many have the best intentions but fail to take the right action because they do not have the requisite knowledge. Many well intended ventures are launched every year. Sadly, statistics reveal that 4 out of 5 startups fail. Those who failed also intended to succeed, but they did not possess the technique, the knowledge for doing it correctly. This brings us to the mindset of acquiring the proper knowledge for accomplishing success, happiness, and fulfillment. Some people say that knowledge is not really necessary and the power of intention is sufficient. They profess that if we sincerely desire something, we will surely attain it. They go by the statement, "You are in life where you wish to be." However, while this statement may seem nice to read, it is far from the truth. Let me share my experience on this topic with you. Once we were driving in the state of Odisha, India, from one town to another. We started from Fulbani and intended to go to Patna. Along the way, near Bodh, we lost our bearings. So we stopped and asked the owner of the nearby petrol station for directions. He was very kind and explained the way in detail and even made a map for us. We proceeded with the map, but after 2.5 hours, we landed up in Sambalpur. What had gone wrong? We had intended to be in Bhavanipatna and we had even put in our earnest effort, but mere intention was not enough. The problem was that the map made by the petrol pump owner was wrong. Lack of proper knowledge had caused our undoing. The maxim, "You are in life where you intend to be," was proved incorrect to us on that day. Thank you, Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, Sheetalji, for reading Radhe Radhe. Okay, so we have just started this fresh chapter. Just to remind you, I think we have covered a lot of things. So with the help of this model, we can just go back a little bit, right? In the first chapter, we just learned the importance of mindsets, various aspects of mindsets. And then in the second chapter, which is actually numbered as first chapter in this book, we learned about the positive thinking, mindset of positive thinking. And we said, it helps us to move in the correct direction. And then we came to the next chapter of mindset of taking responsibility for our emotions. Time to time, since we are not pure yet, we start getting into these negative thinking habits. We start blaming, pinpointing, or we don't take responsibility for what we are going through in our life. So we learned about all about this mindset of taking responsibility, and we said that if we have this mindset, it will help us, it will prevent us from going backwards or from going in the wrong direction. Then we came to this chapter of inspiration, mindset of inspiration, where we saw various examples how people had a lot. We need inspiration. First of all, we need inspiration to make a great progress. I mean, we want to do something, but due to lack of inspiration, we give up very easily. We don't understand the reasons. We looked at various things, like we have to clearly list down what and what ifs. That will help us, that will motivate us. We looked at internal motivation, external motivation. And then after that, again, at the end of that chapter, Swamiji said, mere inspiration is not sufficient. We need purity of intention. And just at the beginning of this chapter itself, the purity of intention, we saw the example of famous personalities like Ramalinga Raju, who had all the inspiration, you know all the energy to become successful he had, but his intentions were wrong, and that led to his failure. So if inspiration, positive thinking is taking you in the right direction, positive thinking is taking you in the positive direction, inspiration is increasing the speed with which you progress. Taking responsibility for your emotions is helping you, preventing you from going backwards. At the same time, purity of intention also helps you to be on track instead of going in the wrong direction. So this also prevents your failure. Then now at the end of this chapter again, Swamiji said, now in these paragraphs also, Swamiji is telling that purity of intention is also not sufficient, because you may have intentions, or you may also put efforts along with the intentions, but if you don't have the prerequisite knowledge about whatever you are trying to do, you are still not going to succeed. So it's very important that we have the knowledge. What kind of knowledge do we need? We need a knowledge on, if we have this tool in our hand, for example, this car itself, how to drive the car, what is the destination, what is the route to reach that destination, all these kinds of knowledge we need. And if we don't have knowledge, if we are lack of knowledge, then what we will do, we will end up doing trial and error. And there is high chance that while doing trial and error, you will pick up some wrong choices, and those wrong choices will lead to failure. Very nice example already explained here in these paragraphs. Swamiji was in Odisha. He was going to some place, and since they were not clear about the route, so they landed at some other place. So they had intention, to reach to a place, but without the knowledge of the route, they landed up in a different place, so it led to failure. So it is a simple analogy, which I think can be applied to various situations in our life also. Same thing applies there also. So if you don't have knowledge, the road to hell is paved with good intentions also. Okay. So what kind of knowledge do we need? The technique, the process, the do's and don'ts, all these things are needed. And most of the people in the world, what in spite of knowing that they are not having the sufficient knowledge, they remain in ignorance due to laziness, due to incorrect priorities. And that is not something that, though you may have intention to achieve, to go in the right direction, if you don't acquire the required knowledge, if you remain lazy, if you don't go deeper to understand all the techniques and processes, it will still lead you to failure, right? So it is very important. Let's go ahead. Who wants to read next? Anybody new who can read? Please don't hesitate. In this book reading session, we give opportunity to people to read the paragraphs. That's how we keep opening and start doing satsang with each other. Raise your hand, we will unmute you. Who wants to go next? Nalini ji has raised her hand. These are our usual readers. Please go ahead. Let's unmute her.
Ganesh, if anybody new wants to go, I'm quite happy not to do
Yes,
it.
definitely. We don't see any hands raised yet, so we will go ahead with you.
Okay, thank you. Radhe. Thus, purity of intention is insufficient for accomplishment. It needs the support of the mindset of knowledge. If you wish to play golf, a positive attitude will surely be helpful for better performance. However, if you do not know the technique of executing the shot, no amount of positive thinking will carry the ball over the pond through the thistles and around the sand trap. There are numerous bankruptcies filed every year by people who conceived brilliant ideas for success. They had the purest of intentions and believed with all their heart that they could achieve their goals. But what they lacked was technique. Some people claim ignorance is bliss. But if ignorance is bliss, then why are the ignorant, the uneducated, and the unintelligent miserable? Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is misery, disease, pain, and agony. Let me narrate a funny story to illustrate the point. I heard of a married couple who was returning from the funeral of their uncle Dharmendra. He had lived with them for 20 years. He had been such a nuisance that he had almost succeeded in ruining their marriage. "There is something I have to say to you, dear," said the husband. "If it hadn't been for my love for you, I wouldn't have put up with your uncle Dharmendra for a single day." "My uncle Dharmendra?" the wife exclaimed in horror. "I thought he was your uncle." They both realized that due to ignorance, they had suffered for 20 years. For this couple, ignorance was definitely not bliss. They had made a false assumption without bothering to find out the truth, and it had brought 20 years of suffering upon them. What was the cause of suffering? Ignorance.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Radhe
you,
Radhe.
Nidhi. Radhe Radhe. Right. So purity of intention, again emphasizing that it is insufficient for accomplishment. We may have achieved, through our practice some pure intentions to do good in the society, right? But if we don't have the knowledge, then we are still not going to succeed. And people keep giving reasons, right? Ignorance is bliss. We hear about this. I have heard this many times being uttered by people. I think after reading this chapter, after understanding ignorance leads to suffering, I can easily say that it is just an excuse that people make. It is an excuse because acquiring knowledge requires effort. For example, if you want to know something, you have to read about it or you have to hear about it. You have to put effort, you have to give time, you have to set priorities. If you don't do all that, then you are not going to acquire knowledge, and doing all that requires effort. And people do not want to put that effort, though it is not a great amount of effort, but still, mind likes to go to something or do something which doesn't require effort. Sitting in front of TV watching some movies, it doesn't require a lot of effort, right? And that's why know we tend to go towards that. Many people tend to go towards that. And the other thing is ignorance. I mean, not making an effort to understand the truth. There are problems around us, and we are also going through the problems. It may be our personal problem, it may be some other social problem, or it may be a problem on which you are working in your profession, in your company. We engineers mostly, we are trying to, or for that matter any profession, we are always trying to firefight, trying to solve different types of problems, technical problems. Many people I see in my profession, I'm mechanical engineer, we work on engines, and I see many people, 90% of the people remain at superficial level. They don't understand if something is happening, why it is happening, because you know everybody is running behind timelines, and nobody is bothered to go deeper and understand why certain things are happening. In this example, very nicely Swamiji has explained to this couple has been busy, being busy in their life. Somebody came into their life, and 20 years they continued, 20 years, right? Yeah, 20 years they continued to suffer that situation with him. They did not bother to know more details. They did not bother to ask each other more details. What was stopping? Probably laziness, no priorities, or maybe their ego, which is coming in the path. So all those kinds of things prevent us from understanding, gathering more details. And if we are remaining mediocre, superficial, we are going to get what we deserve. We are not going to get great results. So the same thing has happened here. How ignorance is visible? false assumptions we make, because we do not want to go deeper and understand the facts, understand the actual things, details. We just keep assuming that, "Oh, this might be happening because of this." That is how we become ignorant. Lack of knowledge, wrong knowledge, incomplete knowledge. In all these ways, we cultivate ignorance instead of knowledge, and that ignorance leads to failure, leads to misery, disease, pain. It is not a bliss at all. So next time when you will hear from somebody, share with them this story. Okay, let's move on. Who wants to go next? I would like to see somebody new raising their hand. It's a good opportunity for opening up. Be brave. It doesn't require a lot of bravery, but still, breaking the ice within you. No one? No one wants to try themselves? Who wants to go? I see so many people are there. I'm sure there are some great readers in this class. Anybody, go ahead. Whoever wants to go for it. This is the last set of slides for reading. Shrishti ji, great. Let's unmute her.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Here is another story highlighting the anguish of ignorance. A patient went to a doctor as his stomach was gripping terribly and he was in immense pain. On reaching the clinic, he found that the doctor was not in, so he waited in his chamber, but the pain in his abdomen was unbearable. Finally, after an hour, the doctor walked in. He checked the patient, prescribed medicine, and asked the pharmacist to dispense it. The patient exclaimed, "Oh, doctor, the medicine was with the pharmacist all along. Due to my ignorance of what the right medicine was, I suffered indescribable misery for an hour while waiting for you to arrive." The doctor responded, "Ignorance is the reason for all our suffering. If only we can get the proper knowledge, misery disappears." The doctor had echoed the profound words of sage Vedvyas. Ajnanamevasya hi karanam. Adhyatma Ramayan. The cause of suffering in all human beings is their lack of knowledge. Thus, the journey of life is a movement from the darkness of ignorance to the light of wisdom.
Okay, thank you, Srishti ji. Radhe Radhe. So another example to reinforce why ignorance is pain. Ignorance is not at all bliss. In this simple, very simple, straightforward example, to understand the equation clearly, that the ignorance does lead to pain only, misery only. Here, this individual had a stomach pain. He has been suffering. He went to the doctor. Doctor was not available. This situation is a usual situation. I think when you you will visit hospital, clinic, sometimes, not sometimes, many times you may have to wait for the doctor. And why are we waiting? Because we don't have the knowledge that doctor has. The medicine may be there only, right there only in some box. Okay, prescription, whatever we need to treat ourselves, it might be there, but we are not able to do anything other than suffering because we don't have the knowledge. So ignorance is definitely not a bliss. When the doctor arrived, he gave the medicine, it solved the problem, and a realization dawned to that patient that in ignorance he has been suffering. And this is actually the knowledge that we need to know. And Vedavyas has already mentioned this in Adhyatma Ramayana. Ajnana mevasya hi moola karanam. The root cause is ignorance. Root cause of what? All the suffering. The cause of suffering in all human beings is their lack of ignorance, lack of knowledge. The same thing is reiterated, the same thing is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita also in this verse 5.15, which says, Nadatte kasyachit papam na chaiva sukrutam vibhuhu ajnane navrutam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha. What Lord Krishna is telling is the omnipresent God doesn't involve himself in the sinful or virtuous deeds of anyone. The living entities are deluded because their inner knowledge is covered by ignorance. So it is ignorance which is causing all the suffering. And you know, the fact, I think you would have heard about this in when Swamiji speaks in his videos, that one of the characteristic of soul of all of us is that we seek knowledge. We want to always know. Like we seek happiness, we also seek knowledge. We do not want to remain ignorant, actually, because if somebody says somebody says that something like this is happening, you would like to know more about it. You start becoming curious. Please tell me, please tell me. You do not want to remain ignorant or remain unaware of something. So that is actually our nature only. uh, and our journey of life is also a movement from darkness to light of wisdom. So if you go back in your life and see what you were knowing so less, but slowly in your life, every moment in your life, you kept on acquiring knowledge from people, knowledge from the experiences of life, and you kept on building your knowledge, and you became more and more wise. Now you are able to take the decisions. Now you are able to understand why certain things are happening. It is all because you have moved ahead. You have moved from that darkness of ignorance to the light of wisdom, and that is why you are able to lead a life which is much more better compared to what it could have been if you were in ignorance. The difference, the disparity that we see in our society, some people are really successful, some people are not so successful. One of the root cause is this ignorance only. You can clearly see that difference between them. Okay, with that, we are just done with book reading that was planned for today. Let's quickly, before we watch Swamiji's video, which is very interesting video on the same topic, let's look at some announcements. So as you all know, Swamiji is in US, just finished the West Coast retreat, which was on Bhagavad Gita chapter 8. Very interesting. He completed that chapter. Then I think I should have removed this. The next retreat will be, I think, family camp in July in Dallas. So let me see if I can. Okay, meanwhile, we are going through the video. I'll try to pull the Dallas retreat registration link, and then I'll share with you all on the chat box. Okay, but here, this is the link where you can find the details of all the events that are planned. Okay, so please try to visit that and see. If you are staying somewhere near, it is a great opportunity to be in contact with Swamiji, to talk to him personally, learn from him, right? And this yoga festival is coming closer. It is being planned in US as well as it is being planned in India. So you will receive all the details soon in the groups. Definitely watch out for that and join. And if you are, I would urge you to consider contributing to Jagat Guru Kripalu University, the mission that we all have right now on our shoulders. This university is getting developed in Banara, and a small contribution, you know, that you make can make a big difference. So definitely consider to donate. You will have many angels who are striving to, have funds, bring funds. I'm also an angel, and while donating, you will also see my name, Ganesha's fundraising page. Consider for donation. Okay, let's go ahead. Let me stop sharing slide screen and I'll share the video screen.
There are weight reduction diets. They have this package for reducing weight. But why will anybody adopt it? So they give testimonials before, after. People look, wow, now the faith is getting created. So likewise, Lord Krishna, he is the master teacher. But for others to benefit from it, faith must be established. Without faith, people don't utilize it. Lord Krishna in this verse is giving its credibility.
Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse chanting is followed by translation and commentary by Swami Mukundananda.
श्रीभगवानुवाच इमं विवस्वते योगं प्रोक्तवानहमव्ययम् विवस्वान् मनवे प्राह मनुरिक्ष्वाकवे ब्रवीत्.
The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna said, I taught this eternal science of yoga to the sun god Vivaswan, who passed it on to Manu, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. There is nothing as sublime in this world as pure wisdom. Even in the material realm, one little bit of knowledge can make such a big difference. You know, there is an affliction called scurvy. The doctors here will be knowing it gets caused when you don't receive any intake of vitamin C for a month at a stretch. And that is why in the olden days, the sailors who would be in their ship for 1 month or 2 would get afflicted by scurvy. And it is such an awful disease. So the colonialists who came from Europe to America in the 15th, 16th century, they were getting afflicted by scurvy because of their sea voyage and because probably they didn't access vitamin C out here. Now there was one vegetable that could have solved their problems, and that was tomatoes, which were full of vitamin C. And yet these colonialists who died in huge numbers because of scurvy never took advantage of tomatoes for many decades, because some of them had carried them to Europe, and there one person had misinformed that this is like the wolf peach, and if you eat this, it will cause frothing in the mouth and it will cause twitching of the body and even death. Everybody believed that misinformation, and that was the reason the cure for scurvy was in front of them. they did not utilize until somebody informed them it is not the case. And then they started healing themselves. So even in the worldly realm, we all know that one gem of wisdom makes such a huge difference. A patient was suffering from griping stomachache, and he went to the doctor's clinic. The doctor was not there in his chamber. The patient was waiting, and each moment was seeming like an age long. Finally, when the doctor came, the patient expressed his problem to him, and the doctor said, "Not to worry. I've got a medicine here in the cabinet, my cupboard, and this will cure it right away." He administered the dose to the patient, and in less than a minute, the patient's stomach ache started subsiding. The patient said, "Doctor, the cure was right here, and I was suffering because of my lack of knowledge of it." The doctor said, "That is exactly what it is. Human beings suffer in so many ways because they lack knowledge of the cure." Vedavyas says, "Ajnanamevasya hi moola karanam." The main cause of the suffering of humankind is ignorance. Of course, somebody may say that it is lack of availability of vaccine in developing countries, that's why humankind is suffering. These are all smaller reasons. And the main cause why we are unhappy, the main reason why we are not blissful, we are not experiencing love and the light of knowledge, is the ignorance that is enveloping our soul. Now think, who is speaking this knowledge? It's coming from the lotus mouth of God Himself. When you keep that in mind, you benefit more from the knowledge. The Chit Shakti gets added. Otherwise, knowledge becomes devoid of Chit. Lord Krishna is bestowing that knowledge, but for others to benefit from it, faith must be established. Without faith, people don't utilize it. Lord Krishna in this verse is giving its credibility. Like, for example, there are, weight reduction diets. They have this package for reducing weight. But why will anybody adopt it? So they give testimonials before, after. People look, wow, now the faith is getting created. So likewise, Lord Krishna, He is the master teacher. If He just says, "Arjun, here is the knowledge," Arjun will hear it but never implement it. So to establish the credibility, Lord Krishna says, "Arjun, this knowledge I am giving you is not just to make you fight the war. It is the same science that I bestowed in the beginning of creation." So He bestowed it to Brahmaji, as we all know, "Tene Brahmaridaya Adikave." Bhagavad says, but here He says He also bestowed it to Vivaswan, the sun god. And the sun god bestowed it to the Prajapati, the progenitor of humankind, that is Manu. Swayambhuva Manu. And Manuji Maharaj, he bestowed it to the first king of the solar dynasty, which was Ikshvaku. So he's saying that this is how the knowledge came. And that also helps create bhav towards it. Now, you go to somebody's house, let us say your grandfather used to live there who is no more, and you're going around, and then your father says, you know, this is the chair on which your grandfather sat for 20 years. Now you look at the chair differently. The chair is the same, but the way you look at it has become different. You have got that jnana chakshu. Likewise, you go into a temple and there is an idol made of stone. Somebody who is unaware of its importance thinks, oh, it is an idol. But then you look at it with the eyes of knowledge. The prana pratishtha was done. We invoked the presence of the Lord in these deities, and millions of souls still today have worshipped it. Now the bhav increases. And if somebody tells you, you know, this deity was also worshipped by Jagadguru Ramanujacharya, then you say, oh really? And you know, it was actually first given by Hanumanji himself who manifested. Now the way you look at that deity will be completely different. Layers of devotion will have gotten added. Likewise, Lord Krishna is telling, look, it came to Manu. This is now actually the Vaivasvat Manvantar. So, Manuji Maharaj, he lives for 30 crore, 67 lakh 20,000 years. And our Manuji Maharaj, Vaivasvat Manvantar, he is already 12 crore years old. So this knowledge, this science is so old. And that also is a limited description because God is eternal. And the soul is also eternal. So the science of God realization is eternal. That eternal science, Lord Krishna says, Arjun, I am now discussing it with you.
Okay, so I hope the message is clear. Swamiji emphasized how knowledge changes everything and how ignorance leads to suffering. He actually went one step further and also mentioned the importance of faith while acquiring the knowledge. So let's move on. We will just quickly look at the quiz. Whoever wants to answer the questions, they can fill the blanks, provide responses. They can raise their hands. We will unmute you. The first point, many have the best intentions but fail to take the right action because they do not have the dash. What is that? Okay, let's unmute her. Riyaji, let me unmute you.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe, is it faith?
Radhe, Radhe. Anybody wants to take a try? Give a try. Sheetalji, go ahead.
Because they do not have the proper knowledge.
Requisite knowledge. Next one. In the story of Swamiji traveling between the towns in Odisha, the intention and effort proved insufficient to reach the destination. Dash caused the undoing.
Lack of proper knowledge.
Lack of proper knowledge. Yes, correct. Next one. The dash is insufficient for accomplishment. It needs the support of the mindset of knowledge. What is that which is insufficient? Anybody else who wants to give a try, feel free to raise your hand. We will unmute you.
Effort.
Anyone else? What was that we learned in the last
The
chapter?
purity of intentions.
Yes. The purity of intention is insufficient. You need to add mindset of knowledge to that. What is not bliss and what is misery, disease, pain, and agony?
The first one is ignorance.
Then
Dance is misery. World is misery.
anybody else who wants to try? Feel free to raise your hand, participate. I think while participating, the knowledge will get reinforced. You will, capture the knowledge properly in your mind. Okay, Sheetalji again.
Yeah, it is ignorance. I think Kumaresh ji is
Yeah,
raising his
ignorance.
hand
Is
in the
it
image, in the photo. I think so. I don't know. Let's see him.
Kumaresh ji?
Yeah, Kumaresh. Yeah, but now he's I think he maybe not doesn't know the reaction. I think. I don't know.
Okay, I have unmuted you, Kumaresh ji. Do you want to try the next one?
Say
Yes.
ignorance only. I wanted to just say ignorance only.
Okay, do you want to try the next one?
Sorry,
In the
again,
story of
lack of knowledge.
lack of knowledge about the uncle Dharmendra,
Brought 20 years.
false assumption, another form of ignorance. Okay, false assumption about uncle Dharmendra brought 20 years of suffering upon them. Ignorance was the cause of their suffering. Okay, next one. In the story of a patient with stomach pain, the patient suffered indescribable pain for an hour due to the ignorance of what the right medicine was. Ignorance is the reason for all our sufferings. Dash disappears if only we can get proper knowledge. What disappears?
Suffering.
Suffering. Anyone else?
Pain. Yeah, suffering.
Anyone else who wants to take a guess? Sheetalji again.
Misery.
Misery disappears. As soon as we have the proper knowledge, misery disappears. Sage Vedvyas said the cause of suffering in all human beings is their
Ignorance.
lack of knowledge.
Lack
Ignorance.
of knowledge.
Yes.
Lack of
Yes.
knowledge.
Yeah. The journey of life is a movement from darkness of ignorance to the
Light of knowledge.
light of wisdom.
Light of wisdom.
Yes, same thing. Great. I hope it was useful to all of you to look at all these key points. Let's move on. Before we get into this assignment, if anybody wants to share with all of us anything, any experience that you have, which is also related to what we have read today, feel free to raise your hand. It'll be great to learn the real life examples directly from the people who have experienced it. That way we will engage in discussion, do a little bit of satsang. We have 10 minutes. We can use 5 minutes for discussion if anybody wants to share any experience or any key knowledge that they have. Nalini ji has raised her hand. Let's give her chance.
Just a simple observation. The story about the couple who had the uncle living with them. I think it's more to due to how polite Indian society is. because I can't imagine a situation like that happening in the West. Nobody would even let you enter their house if they didn't know who you were or were familiar. You know, they would be regarded as complete strangers. So I think it's more to do with the cultural thing than lack of ignorance. And, you know, if it went on for 20 years, that proves it. It's a cultural politeness. That's how I would view it.
So
But
in
anyway,
India, currently also, I think nobody would allow anybody simply like that. So this was an extreme example
yeah,
where false assumptions have led. So the important thing is, I think, the ignorance element, how the ignorance element, what what type of ignorance element led to their suffering.
yeah,
Eventually, it will.
I get that. I get that. But I make that observation because of my very first trip to India, because all my life I dreamt of going to India. And when I got there and I was female on my own, traveling for 4 months in a country where I didn't know a single person. And I met strangers who treated me better than my family.
Right.
Seriously. And I was staying at top hotels because that's what I had booked.
Right.
And every time I met anybody on a coach trip, they would say to me, why are you spending so much money in a hotel like that? Come and stay with us. We would put you up for as many months as you want. I mean, I didn't take advantage of it, but I got that reaction everywhere I went, everywhere.
Right.
And I felt, you know, part of the human world because of how I was treated. It really was an eye-opener because having lived in the West all my life, I had never even experienced anything like it. You know, I was left in tears when I left India because I made so many good friends. They were just so friendly and genuine with their generosity and kindness and hospitality. And it wasn't just one or two people; it was everywhere.
Right.
Anyway, that's just my observation.
No,
Thank
now
you.
the point you have raised is very much related to what Swamiji has mentioned. It is not sufficient to have purity of intention. If people have accepted a guest in their, in their house, it is their pure intention. They
Yes.
want to help somebody, but
Yes.
that is not sufficient. They also need to have the right knowledge instead of making assumptions. If they inquired and acquired that right knowledge about this individual, that
Yeah.
wouldn't have led to suffering. So I think it proves eventually that you may have a pure intention. You may want to help, you may want to do good to the society, but that's not sufficient. You should
No.
have
Yeah.
knowledge also,
No,
otherwise
but the fact that they're willing to suffer through
mm,
that ignorance just shows the pure hospitality, I guess, is what I'm saying.
right.
But I also get the point that you're making because you have to use an example like that to
Mm,
make the point of,
yeah,
what he's trying to say. Thank you for letting me say that anyway.
no
Thank you.
problem. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else who wants to share anything, any point? I think through these kind of discussions only, we contemplate more on the knowledge. We actually ingrain the knowledge deeper. If no one has anything to share, then we will just get into this assignment part of it. The last thing that we can take away from this session and utilize to implement the knowledge in our life, very important part of the process of acquiring knowledge, make is to implement it, make it part of our life, our personality, our second nature. And that will happen only if we make a deliberate effort, deliberate practice. So what can you do? I think as you go back, try to relate lack of knowledge with suffering in various aspects. So when you are at home, if you think that something is causing pain to you, something is causing suffering, irritation, kind of uncomfortable feeling in your home, related, what knowledge are you lacking? What is that knowledge which you are lacking? If you had that, you wouldn't have been in that position. At your home you can do that, at your work definitely you can relate, as I also gave an example of my experience from the workplace, how many people remain superficial without sufficient technical knowledge, and we are just trying to solve big problems with that insufficient knowledge, and we keep suffering, we keep arguing, we keep passing the blames, we keep delaying things, all kinds of suffering happens because we don't have sufficient knowledge. And one person, even one person, if brings the right knowledge to the table, it solves the problem. So you can relate at your workplace, you can relate it in your society, you may be involved in some social work, see how lack of knowledge is leading to suffering. And in the next class we will meet again to discuss your experiences. uh, we will give you chance to speak. Definitely you should share. I will also try to implement this knowledge and bring some experience back to this class. With that, we are done with the class. We have 3 minutes in case anybody wants to share anything. Feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, we will conclude the session here. Nobody seems to be having anything to share. So that means like we will end the session here. Thank you very much for attending this book reading class. Please keep joining. Again, we will meet next Sunday at the same time. Thank you very much. Radhe Radhe. Session ends here. Bye bye.